You're watching CFJC and E, Everything Entertainment.
Tonight, residents of a legal complex forced to look elsewhere.
So I really don't know what we're going to do. No idea.
Open for business in China.
We're really excited about this, and we hope that Kamloops businesses use it.
And city emphasizes going green.
But we're not really going to make sure that we do things that make it better.
The CFJC News at 6:30 with Susan Edgell.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Last evening, City Council voted down an application to rezone a Valley View apartment building. The building had been illegally converted from 4 suites to 12 and had numerous building code violations. The owner has several options as to what he can do with his building, but the 14 tenants have the difficult task of finding somewhere else to live. As Tim Peeling reports tonight, their plight highlights the lack of affordable housing in Kamloops.
What do we do? Where do we go? And then if we do get put up in a hotel, then what do we do with all our stuff, our belongings?
Patrina Goss didn't get much sleep last night. The resident of 2575 Thompson Drive has to move, and she's worried about where she's going to end up living.
I'm born and raised in Kamloops. I've been here a long time. I've never seen such a housing shortage as there is now in town. So I really don't know what we're going to do. No idea.
All the city councils know the shortage of housing in this town.
Goss and some of her neighbors met this morning to talk about their options. Last night, City Council rejected a rezoning application by the building's owner. So the 14 residents now have to find somewhere else to live. The dramatic shortage of affordable housing in Kamloops means they'll be lucky to find anything, and certainly not for the $550 they pay now.
It's going to be tough. There's not really anywhere to, there's a lot of places out there that are expensive. We could afford it, but then we'd basically be giving most of our income to rent. There'd be no extras for the few pleasures that we do have.
That's the kind of housing that we have the very least of. And
Tina Lang was the only councillor to vote for the rezoning. She says the numerous building code violations were a concern, but the overwhelming need for affordable housing was more important to her.
I can't just sort of ignore the fact that we don't have enough rentals in this city. We're at below 0.5% vacancy rate. It is extremely tough, and at all levels. It's hard to find affordable housing. It's hard to find even expensive housing.
Well, I knew it was going to happen.
Richard
anyway.
Foreman is lucky. He's found somewhere to live, but it's not ideal.
My plan is to now move to Heffley Lake, because it's the only place that I can afford, which means driving, 42 kilometers each way to work every day.
But Goss says she hasn't found anything that will work for her. She says it's not fair that she's being forced out of her home when there's nowhere in the city for her to go.
I feel emotionally a wreck right now because what do we do?
Kamloops is opening its doors to the world, or at least to one of the most populated countries in the world, China. The city has recently opened an office in Beijing in the hopes of encouraging more business between the two countries. And the city is offering its services to help you get involved. For investors living in Beijing, this promotional video is the first glimpse they'll see of our city. It's a video that's been put together in the hopes of attracting foreign investment and new business opportunities to Kamloops.
We're just really excited, and we hope to see some business out of this.
In an effort to encourage stronger business links between China and Kamloops, our city has recently opened an office right in downtown Beijing and is encouraging businesses here to use the office to develop new relationships there.
If they're looking at China, maybe to attract, to find a new supplier, a more cost-effective supplier, to find a new market, they've got this great service. It doesn't cost them anything. And we're really excited about this, and we hope that Kamloops businesses use it.
The city will even provide a free translator and set up meetings with prospective investors. You may be wondering why all the fuss over China. It turns out this country of 1.3 billion people is one of our city's largest export markets.
Domtar pulp mill, other than the U.S., it's their second largest market, and it's growing. It will be their #1 export market, they tell me, in just a few years. We know that TRU is one of Canada's leading universities overseas. China is a huge market for them.
Just the students from China alone bring in $40 million in economic spin-offs, and their families are also looking to invest.
We just had a lady, actually, late 2005, come here to visit her son, and she bought 14 townhomes in Sahali, so it was quite shocking, the potential.
And if you're interested in learning more about investment opportunities in China, you can contact the city at www.venturekamloops.com or phone 828-6818. The City of Kamloops has decided to hold off on constructing an animal waste composting site at Cinnamon Ridge, but that doesn't mean it won't be going ahead. City Council is still very interested in proceeding with the composting plant, but they want to make sure they pick the right location. The plant will take in animal waste from slaughterhouses in our region. Cinnamon Ridge was the original location picked for the plant, but with the upcoming airport expansion and development at Tranquille, the area has been decided it's too busy.
Wherever the pilot project is, we want that to be the permanent location should this be a go-ahead, and we don't want to be moving it around. So we thought that there were too many unknowns with the transportation corridors to really pick this site up front, and then we needed to slow it down a little bit and go back to the drawing board.
It will take several weeks for a special committee to choose the right location. Randy Deal says while it may not be the most desirable plant to have in the city, it's something staff plans on supporting.
We strongly believe in the project. We think it's the right thing to do, and we'd like to see it happen. It's just a matter of making sure that the pilot project's location has the potential to be a permanent location, and it's optimal given all the factors.
Okay. Kamloops City Council has adopted a climate action charter. Signed in agreement with the provincial government and the Union of BC Municipalities, the charter is designed to reduce the city's environmental impact and, as Kelsey Woodward reports, serve as an example for residents of the city and the province.
You know, it's not a very big step. It is a step, but it's not a very big one. Really.
That's the reaction from a local environmentalist to the city's plan to adopt a climate action charter. In the charter, the city operations will become carbon neutral by 2012. It will create a greenhouse gas profile of the Kamloops area and work towards creating a more compact community.
What we'll need to do is look at our entire operations, meaning our fleet and our buildings, and look at the carbon footprint we have at the moment and how we can get to carbon neutrality.
To become more carbon neutral, the city plans to increase the number of hybrid and smart cars in their fleet and use biodiesel. They also plan on using alternative methods to heat and cool city buildings and plant more trees on city property.
I think this causes us to be really creative and maybe come up with some things that we hadn't thought of before.
The city has already taken steps towards carbon neutrality, constructing energy-efficient buildings like the Field House, which is heated and cooled with geothermal technology, rather than using conventional systems. But Madsen says this just isn't enough.
Carbon neutral is is what it is neutral. So we're not really making, we're going to make sure things aren't going to get worse, but we're not really going to make sure that we do things that make it better.
The charter was voted in unanimously by City Council, but Councillor Peter Millibar says he does have some reservations.
I guess my one concern was that potentially some policymakers down in Victoria could run with it if everyone signed on and just assume that we agree with everything unilaterally.
I think we're all cognitive of the concern that we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, but at the same time you have to have lofty goals, otherwise really you don't move forward.
The Climate Action Charter isn't legally binding, but instead is a guideline to follow for future planning. Kelsey Woodward, CFJC News.
Traffic on the TransCanada Highway bypass was backed up for about 3 kilometers today, stretching all the way from the Summit Drive exit east to Valley View. The congestion was the result of a collision between 2 tractor-trailer units. The driver of one truck had run out of fuel, and while he was placing reflectors on the road, the driver of a second truck slammed into the stalled vehicle. The impact caused the second trailer to spill some of its load onto the highway.
There was minor injuries sustained by the driver of the first vehicle, and again, no indication of alcohol, speed or anything along the lines, other than the driver, in all likelihood, wasn't paying full attention to what he should have been doing.
The driver of the second truck is being charged with driving without due care and attention. This morning, another trailer was being loaded with the remaining contents from the damaged tractor trailer unit. Coming up next in the news, a new family portrait of Canadians released by Stats Canada. And today's high in Kamloops, 25 degrees. We've got more sunshine on the way.
Pascal Rebreau, chef.
Some surprising numbers released today on what's happening in our Canadian homes. New census results reveal we're marrying less, that dads are the lone parent more often, and that our kids are taking longer to leave home. And in many BC communities, the term Mr. Mom is striking a familiar ring.
You okay? All right.
As she walks away, it seems she's just fine. But being a single dad of 2 little girls, Michael Pope's learning to read the signs.
Something's troubling her.
The Nanaimo man is one of an increasing number of Mr. Moms here in Nanaimo and across Canada.
Well, I guess it's a social phenomenon. And maybe it's part of, and I'm speculating, but maybe it's part of the fact that men are getting more in touch with their feelings. So.
According to Statistics Canada, 1 in 5 single-parent families is now headed by a man. But the numbers in the harbor city are even higher than the national average. In 2006, there were 1,135 single lone parent dads in Nanaimo. It's an increase of nearly 12% from 5 years before. The national increase was only 10%.
It does surprise me, yeah.
The numbers reveal the face of the traditional Canadian family is changing, that it has been for years.
Go run and play. Go.
At this Nanaimo daycare, only 7 of these 25 kids has their original mother and father at home.
It started back in our young generation and has just progressed over the last 20 years to where there's no dominating family unit anymore.
But Mike Pope's committed to making the family he does have work.
It's challenging, but very rewarding. You know, I don't know what it's great. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
BC lottery retailers are coming under closer scrutiny following an ombudsman's report and an audit that found poor security around lotto tickets. The government's gaming branch has hired 16 new staff members and reassigned 4 others to help register and monitor retailers. A report and a subsequent audit found too many retailers were winning prizes and there were poor controls over the handling of winning tickets. As a result of those reports, any lottery retailer claiming a prize of $1,000 or more must claim their winnings in person at a lottery office. In health news tonight, more and more people with a terminal disease are choosing to spend their last days in hospice. With hospice care, you can spend your remaining time surrounded by people you love. Vivian Williams tells us more in today's Medical Edge.
Remember this one?
Esther Matthews is dying of cancer. But instead of living her last months in a hospital or nursing home, she's at home with her daughter Joan and son-in-law Lauren.
I'm happy I don't have to go to a nursing home.
Thanks to hospice care. Hospice is not an attempt at prolonging life or hastening death. It's a philosophy of care that allows the patients and their families to make the dying process as positive as possible.
We've had this beautiful time together, and I know now that I could never have done this myself.
Hospice addresses medical, physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Doctors, nurses, social workers, chaplains, and volunteers work together to make sure patients maintain dignity and control. Melvin Pepper's wife Lorna chose hospice when she was dying of cancer. Now Melvin's a hospice patient too. His 86-year-old body is failing.
All right, let me just check your heart here.
3 days a week, a nurse visits him.
When she leaves, that I don't feel empty. You know, I feel like I'm full to the brim of love.
Melvin also gets visits from Jim, a hospice volunteer who admits it can be tough to grow close to someone who's nearing end of life.
Rather than emphasizing the loss, I think we try to emphasize making the days we have left as good as they possibly can be.